For joining this. I can see some of my friends and I can see our senior professor Karan Saha sir. Thank you everyone for joining this webinar. So at the beginning, let me be clear that I will be sharing my field experiences. I am not an expert on snow leopard. I just have like 3 to 4 years of experience on snow leopard. So I won't be going into too much detail. I will be just trying to share whatever I have learned over 4 5 years by reading articles, doing some field works in Apinampa Conservation Area and Dolpa and from eastern part of Kanchenjunga Conservation Area. So it will be just an overview of what we know of snow leopard status and conservation in Nepal. Uh, so yeah, let me. Sorry, I can't scroll my wait. Yeah. So I'm sure some of you might be curious to know where I am right now. So this is the place where I am. So I am right now at Safe Fuxuna National Park. It's in Western Himalayas. It's above the in the sense right now I am at the district headquarters, but the habitat it encompasses includes the Trans Himalayas above 5,000 meter as well. So this is the place right now. It's a Sulighat Dolpa. It's a park headquarter. The average elevation is about 7,000 feet from the sea level. This is the place where I am right now. You can see. So this is the Google Earth image. You can just see how the landscape looks like. So you might also be curious, how does snow leopard habitat look like in the Himalayas? So we have two prominent habitat types, in fact. So this is the Himalayan habitat type. It lies below the like up to tree line in the sense. So we have Trans-Himalayan habitat. So that lies above the tree line. So this Trans-Himalayan habitat is characterized by very low rainfall, and it's very rugged and it's very dry. And you can so the human population is sparsely populated. So let me start today's discussion with just a brief outline. So I will be providing you an overview of snow leopard status in Nepal. So I will take you back in time. So how did we progress on snow leopard conservation, and what were the research, and what are the current research that are being done, and what are the current conservation approaches and the modalities, and what are the challenges that we have been facing on snow leopard conservation, and what opportunities lies around us so that we can capitalize on that opportunities, and some of the way forward. And I have one extra slide where I have included where the roles of veterinary students and the students like you and the people from the wildlife biology and the animal health field can contribute to, in fact, wildlife conservation. So I have one slide for that. So it will be more of a discussion. So let me quickly give you an overview of snow leopard conservation status in Nepal. So Nepal is estimated to harbor some 300 to 400 snow leopards. And so we have the habitat spread across 13,000 square kilometer area, right from the eastern Nepal to western Nepal. So 30% of that habitat lies outside the current protected area system in the Himalayas, bordering China and like the Tibet. And so the snow leopard habitat in Nepal is divided into 3 administrative units in the northern Himalayas. So in the east, we have the eastern landscape. In the central, we have the central landscape. In the west, we have the western landscapes. So the average estimated density for snow leopards in the eastern landscape is some two snow leopards per 100 square kilometer, and it's very low, supposedly low in low mid central landscape, some 1.5 snow leopards, and it is estimated that the snow leopard has highest density in the western landscape, some 3 to 4 snow leopards per 100 square kilometer. So in Nepal, we all know that we all know that the snow leopard is protected by wildlife law. So we have National Park and Wildlife Protection Act 1973 that prohibits any sort of hunting or poaching of snow leopard. And given the prevalence of Buddhism and the cultural association in the Himalayas, so snow leopards are also protected by the monasteries and the Buddhism culture in the Himalayas. So let me take you back in 1970s. I'm not sure if I hope some of you have read these books. These books were the seminal on snow leopard conservation. So I just don't know why slide is scrolling very fast. So let me quickly go back. I can't go back. Anyway, so these books 80s and after that, and these were the seminal books on snow leopard conservation. And I'm just taking you back to the history, what's how snow leopard conservation began in Nepal. So can you guess when was this photo taken? I don't know if any of, like, I am sure some of you have rightly guessed. This photo was taken, oh god, many, I can't, sorry. So so these photos, so the person you can see, oh god, what's happening, sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to share these photos were taken in laid back. So the person in this photo, and the central person is the George Saller. Is Prasan bhai?
Yes, sir.
Slide देखिए आचा.
Yes, sir. Visible, sir.
It's not their waiting room ले गर्दा उभा है. अनि so yeah, so I just wanted to share यो दुईवटा photo. These photos were, I guess, 1980s को photo, and you can see the George Saller, one of the pioneer wildlife biologists and most renowned and very like renowned wildlife biologist in the field of wildlife conservation. He came to Nepal in 1970s, early 1970s, and he visited Dolpo. By then there was no national park in Dolpa, and he visited to study the behavior of blue sheep. He didn't come to study snow leopards in particular. He wanted to see the Segumba area, one of the most famous Buddhist monastery, and he wanted to study the behavior of the blue sheep, one of the major prey species of snow leopard. I can't scroll my, yeah, now I can scroll, thanks. So he's the George Saller, yeah. So he published a book called Mountain Monarchs, where he described about the wild sheep and the goats in the Himalayas, and that was the one of the most influential books in the history of wildlife conservation, in particular snow leopard conservation. I would say the in the history of wild snow leopard conservation. So yeah, do you know these persons? Let me show you some of more photos, and of course, if you are familiar with the history of snow leopard conservation, you can of course recognize these two persons. So on the top, we have the Dr. Professor Karan Saha. Back in 1970s, he assisted one of the most pioneering study on wildlife telemetry, first radio telemetry of snow leopards in Langu Valley of Mugu district. By then there was no national park, and this was one of the first ever radio tracking study of snow leopard in the wild. I would say this is one of the key milestones. On the top, yeah, you can see the Professor Karan Saha, and the bottom you can see holding the antenna. He's the Dr. Rodney Jackson, who both of these two scientists pioneered wildlife snow leopard study in Nepal. So over 4 years, they collared 5 snow leopards and tracked their movements, revealing some first ever, revealing some interesting findings about their movement, their rendering behavior, their mating systems, and their food habits, and many like the basic biology and natural history of the of snow leopards. So this was one of the most first ever the pioneer study of snow leopards that was fortunately conducted in Nepal, and fortunately that happened in Langu Valley of Mugu district, and which is now under the jurisdiction of Sephok Snow National Park. So this is the first ever. I would say I don't know if this is the first snow leopard photo appeared in National Geographic, but this is for sure is one of the most most famous photo at that time. And so this appeared in 1986 cover photo of National Geographic based on the study of radio coloring study on Langu Valley of Dolpa. And we have Karan sir fortunately joining with us over webinar today. So I just want to quickly go through the milestones in research in Nepal. So in the 1970s and 1990s, we have this BHF telemetry tracking study on snow leopards, and we have basic natural history study at that time. And at the start of 21st century, over 2000, between 2000 and 2010, we have science survey estimation, like science survey based research going on, and we have national population estimation using science surveys. So in between 2000 and 2013, with the advent of new technologies, including camera trap and next generation sequencing and genetics, so people started using these new technologies to uh, reveal natural history and biology of snow leopards, and also to get more informed, more robust abundance estimates on snow leopard population. So, and after 2013, so spatial ecology of snow leopards by satellite telemetry gained prominence, and camera trap based study, genetic study, and became into play. And so in 2017, so Nepal proposed to establish snow leopard research center focusing on just snow leopard in the eastern Himalayas. So it's under construction and is due to be completed in 2021. So this is the one of the key, so some of the key milestones in terms of research on snow leopard in Nepal. So here are some of the photos that I would like to show you. That these are some of the photos of the radio collared, GPS collared snow leopards in Nepal. So 4 of the snow leopards were collared in Kanchenjunga Conservation Area, and 2 of the left top corner of the snow leopards were collared in say Phokson National Park in 2019. So coloring these individuals snow leopards provides us valuable information that otherwise wouldn't have been gained. We could track them. We could see where are they moving, whether they are interacting, what is their daily movement, what are they eating. We can track, we can understand lots of things about snow leopards by tracking their movement and using GPS satellite collars. Yeah. So this is the place, this is the landscape where we collared Samling and Jeborang, those 2 snow leopards that we collared in Bhijer block of say Phokson National Park. You can see the landscape, how harsh this is, and you can see the small tiny houses. Just front side of this photo, you can see. So you can see the how rugged the landscape is. And these are the happy faces after the collaring expedition. And the good thing is that the Nepalese team single-handedly completed this mission of collaring 2 snow leopards, and it took some 42 days and some 10 months of preparation and some 30 plus personnel involved. We had doctors, we have veterinary doctors, we had tracker, we had the wildlife biologist, we have citizen scientists who worked tirelessly for like plus 30 days to get this done. So let me quickly tell you some of the recent research on snow leopard in Nepal that I know best. I know there have been many research being done on snow leopard conservation area lately and recently. I just want to quickly go through some of the important research that I know best. So say Phokson National Park recently completed like first ever, I would say the largest in its scale, first ever camera trapping survey using some 300 plus camera traps in say Phokson National Park. So it covered some 5,000 square kilometer area. So it took some like we had some 110 plus citizen scientists and field coordinators involved in this study. So this is the one of the first large scale like comprehensive sort of systematic monitoring of snow leopards using camera traps. And the key objective was to estimate the abundance, how many snow leopards are there, using the distinct patterns of snow leopard that we can see in their skins, their forehead, and their tail. And one of the most significant study on snow leopards was conducted in central landscape of Nepal by Chetri and colleagues. They used non-invasive genetic method. So they collected the scats from the fields where the scats were left by the snow leopards, and they used these scats to do genetic analysis. And you can ID the snow leopards based on their genetic signatures. And I'm sure some of you might be very well aware of the genetic methods. I'm not very well into this, but this was one of the most important study. And this study revealed that some 48 individuals occur in the central landscape of Manang, Mustang, and Manaslu, Gorkha in this central landscape area. So the estimated density was some one snow leopards per 100 square kilometer. So, and the like one of the most important study I would say again was the satellite telemetry expedition in Kanchenjunga Conservation Area that started in 2013 and completed in 2017. And so this study was able to collar 4 snow leopards with with the GPS collars. Unlike VHF collars, we can track the like very real time, not real time, but the very near real time movement of snow leopards. So these collars provide you every bit of information from like where is the location, where is like the some sort of temperature loggers we have in every 4 hours. So you can see that you can at least track the movements of snow leopards in near real time. So this study found transbounding movement of this these collared individual snow leopards from China and to China, like the Tibet area of China and the Assam, I guess, the in the Indian part also. So indicating that the we need to think beyond protect areas if we want to conserve snow leopards, because their home range is so large that we can just protect them inside the cage or inside the individual protect area. So this coloring study provides very insightful information about land use planning in terms of like the climate is changing. We have to identify the climate refuges, like where are the safe habitats for snow leopards, where are their dispersal corridors, so that we can protect that habitats very minutely. So these are some of the studies that I just wanted to share with you. Yeah, this red circle indicates the transbounding movement. So some of the ongoing and planned research programs that I would like to talk to you. So we have national level population survey of snow leopards. It's under planning. So the Snow Leopard Conservation Action Plan, national level Snow Leopard Conservation Action Plan was supposed to conduct this national level survey of snow leopards in 2020. So we had to postpone. In fact, we had proposed the budget, but due to COVID pandemic and the funding crunch, we had to postpone this activity. So, so in fact, government of Nepal with support from WWF Nepal so has been planning. So this project has been approved. So we wanted to color some 12 snow leopards, some 4 snow leopards in Dolpa, and some 4 plus snow leopards in 4 snow leopards in maybe Dhorpatan, and some other snow leopards in central landscape of Nepal. So I don't know the very detail, but there is a big plan that to color the snow leopards in every landscape, central, western, and eastern landscape, to get more very detailed information on snow leopard as spatial ecology. Where are they moving? What are the landscapes they are using? And as I already mentioned, government of Nepal is constructing a snow leopard research center in Kanchenjunga, which is due to be completed in 2021. And I'm sure again this will be one of the most like this very motivating factor as well, and one of the key milestones in snow leopard conservation in Nepal. So what are the key research gaps? I just wanted to highlight quick research gaps. As I already mentioned, that more than 30% of the snow leopard habitat occurs beyond the protected area system of Nepal. So just few 70% of the habitat is protected, and these are the key corridor, like the one of the key connecting areas. For example, you can see the Charka corridor that lies the left hand side corridor, Charka corridor. It connects central landscape and western landscape, and this is outside the protected area. And we know very little about occurrence of snow leopard in that landscape. Apart from anecdotal surveys and some incidental reports, we don't have very systematic and rigorous monitoring or any conservation action in this place. So we need to understand. We need to know what are there, and whether there is good snow leopard habitat, and how many habitat, and if yes, how many snow leopards are there. If we want to have a comprehensive understanding of snow leopard status in Nepal, we really need to focus on those unprotected landscapes, because there are no formal mechanisms for protection and there are no formal research programs going on there. So we really need to understand what's going on there. So let me quickly again summarize the milestones in terms of conservation achievement in Nepal. So in the late 1990s and 1970s, so government of Nepal focused on enacting the acts and regulations and establishing protected areas to preserve the pristine landscape and wildlife habitats. And at that time, there was no focus. There was very little focus on research and other development and use of technologies. At that time was like sort of establishment of protected areas and just trying to make the foundation so that we can develop on that. And in between 2000 and 2010, and government of Nepal formulated first ever action plan focusing on snow leopard conservation in 2005, and that provided that provided a strategic framework to snow leopard conservation in Nepal, that outlined the action plan outlined the main vision and goals and the strategic actions for snow leopard conservation in Nepal. And that was again the foundation of the initiation of community-based snow leopard conservation efforts, like the establishment of snow leopard conservation committees that were the very local grassroots level institutions, like the loose institutions that take care of like the regular monitoring and conservation of snow leopards. And we had the saving and credit groups started in 2000, just to like uplift the livelihood of local communities that rely on snow leopard landscapes for their livelihood. So and between 2010 and 2013, so government revised the action plan because the new challenges were emerging, like the challenges associated with the climate change impacts, the development aspirations that were just penetrating in these very untouched landscape of the Himalayas. And government recognized that and updated the conservation action plan in 2012 for again 5 years. And in 2013, global conservation community recognized the importance of global level conservation consortium, because we know that the snow leopards are the very large ranging species. They occur in very sparsely populated, and they have very low reproductive output in the sense that they occur in very rugged area, and we really need to think beyond the protected areas, because they don't, these species, the snow leopards don't recognize the sort of political boundaries, and they frequently cross the landscapes and the countries. So government snow leopard range countries and other snow leopard research scientists recognize the importance of like sort of global level program. So the GSLEP stands for the global snow leopard ecosystem protection program. So there was a big conference on snow leopard in 2013 in Bishkek, and the government of Kyrgyzstan led this effort, and all 12 snow leopard range countries agreed on that, and they placed and they developed the strategic framework and the program, and they placed like the international level cooperation for snow leopard conservation. And the government of Nepal identified the conservation landscapes. So for example, GSLEP has identified 20 snow leopard landscapes to be secured by 2020. So Nepal has 3 snow leopard landscapes under GSLEP framework. So we need to conserve those landscapes, and government of Nepal identified 3 landscapes, central, eastern, and western landscape, to be conserved under the GSLEP framework in an effort to like the global approach for snow leopard conservation. And apart from that, government of Nepal also introduced the wildlife damage relief guideline to compensate for the livestock losses that occurred due to snow leopard damage. So we know that the local people in that landscape also share that landscape with the snow leopards, and some form of livestock depredation by snow leopard is very inevitable. And either we need to reduce the livestock depredation or we need to compensate. Otherwise, there will be retaliatory killing. So retaliatory killing is one of the key threats to snow leopard. So government introduced this. And between 2014 2020, so government of Nepal again updated the action plan and involved in the GSLEP process and actively contributed. And in 2017, it hosted the GSLEP level very big meeting in Kathmandu, I guess in 2016. And that fostered the transboundary collaboration with China. You can see, you may have read the news that Nepal had MOU with China on biodiversity collaboration. And government of Nepal started preparing the climate smart landscape management plan, and that was piloted for eastern landscape. And because we know that the climate is changing and it could pose threats to the landscape and people that reside there. And government of Nepal also plans and also is strengthening the livestock insurance schemes. These insurance schemes run like the other normal insurance scheme, but these are very locally adapted and locally derived. And local communities who rear and local herders who rear livestock, they insure their livestock, and they have locally managed system to compensate for the livestock losses, and they receive premiums and they get compensation back. And I already mentioned that the establishment of research center was one of the key milestones for snow leopard conservation in Nepal. So as I just spoke, so government of Nepal has prepared the first ever climate smart landscape management plan for snow leopard. And this demonstrate, and it is the evidence of that government of Nepal's high commitment to achieve the vision of GSLAPE or snow leopard conservation. You can see in the white and yellow boxes snow leopards movement ranges that span from Nepal, India, and China. So we need to think beyond the protect area boundary. We need to think beyond protect area side. We need to think beyond countries. So we need to think about landscape and the regional scale. So that's why government of Nepal, in support from snow leopard scientists and the donor and the conservation partners, prepared this plan. So I just wanted to highlight some of the policy documents. Here are some of the policy documents introduced by government of Nepal in an effort to leverage support for conservation. You can see the action plans, you can see the snow leopard manuals, you can see on the middle, you can see the experience, like the documentation of experience gained over the satellite telemetry expedition in conservation area. We have manuals in Nepali language published to guide snow leopard citizen scientists on how to monitor snow leopards, how to operate camera traps, how to use GPS, and all the like local regular monitoring of snow leopards. So what have we learned over the years? I know there has been challenges. I know there have been progress. I know there have been threats. I know there have been like off and on and off, like some decades. Some years saw very huge like the policy support for snow leopard conservation, and some years very less. So what have we learned over the years? So this may not be applicable across everything, and not necessarily everyone may have the same view, but I feel the key learning that we have gained over the years is that the enabling government policy is key to any research and conservation efforts. Unless there is an enabling government policy for research, for conservation, for regulations, and for everyone, unless there is an enabling policy and enabling working environment, we cannot progress on any terms in research or conservation. So this because government of Nepal introduced very liberal research policy, and liberal in the sense you can get easily the research permits, unlike in many other countries where you have like the very hard fighting strategy if you want to get the research permits. In Nepal, it's very easy. And government of Nepal always welcomed scientists. That is demonstrated by the first ever pioneering study on Nepal. And the government of Nepal introduced acts and regulations, and like the Wildlife Crime Control Bureaus, MOUs, the China, and participation in GSLAPE. Nepal is currently the chair of steering committee of the Global Snow Leopard Ecosystem Program. So these policy has really contributed in research and conservation of snow leopard in Nepal. And what I also think is capacitating local government, like so local community institutions, is key if we really want to really leap on local level snow leopard conservation. Because see, these landscapes are very rugged, and the presence of whatever $1,000 you have in your basket, long-term presence of external researcher is extremely difficult in these landscapes. I am also outsider. Although I born in Mid Hill, I am raised in the Tarai area plains, and I had difficulty in adapting in these landscapes. And unless you capacitate it, unless you empower local community institutions like snow leopard conservation committees or the mother groups or the credit groups or whatever local institutions are there, you are not going to get good data, and you are not going to get what you want to achieve in terms of conservation goals. So I really want to focus on this, that we really need to capacitate these local institutions. So let's say so apart from few sites, like for example in Mongolia, we have long-term monitoring of snow leopards from 2008 to 2020. So far, I have come across only one paper in any language, in English language at least, only one paper that documents the recruitment rate, the turnover of the snow leopard population, and the long-term monitoring of snow leopard population. Because one-time information is not sufficient to get real insights of how snow leopard population is faring. Unless you have like 4-5 years of data, you can't really tell what's going on there. If you have 4-5 years of data, you can see whether the population is increasing or decreasing. And this is only population. This is only possible if we have long-term boots on the ground, and that is only possible when you capacitate local communities. So what I think again, so application of cutting edge technology, particularly the satellite use of the GPS collars, use of the non-basic genetic approach, and use of camera traps has drastically improved our ability to understand snow leopard ecology and behavior. Not only ecology and behavior, but also the socioeconomic dimensions. Because once these cutting edge technologies gain prominent, and we had real approach in the ground, because we could go there and we could use technology at the same time we could do social studies, so that we can improve our understanding. And never before has like these technologies been so easily available at our disposal to improve the understanding of snow leopard. And we are really at good position. We have very good opportunities to leverage the use of these techniques, not just to improve our understanding, but also to leverage conservation and support whoever wants to protect snow leopards, be it government, be it NGOs, or be it local community institutions. So use of cutting edge technology has been really grateful, and it has been boon. But while I'm mentioning that, I just want to reiterate that we should never forget the boots on the ground. Natural history is the basic like the fundamental to any of the ecological and biological studies. Unless you have the very good knowledge of natural history, like for example, what is the behavior of Lucy? What are the local bird species? What are the local plant species? All these very basic understanding of the natural history and behavior of species is required. So one other thing is we need to really empower local communities, and requires activities that address their livelihood concerns. So unless you have some activities aligning to improve their livelihood support, you may not succeed in achieving livestock like snow leopard conservation goals. So for that, you really need to strengthen livestock insurance scheme. You need to you really need to introduce compensation guidelines. You really need to support saving and credit groups, and you need to support them to mitigate livestock depredation. Maybe you can support for the improved corals. So you really need to empower local communities, and empowering this requires that activities that addresses their livelihood concerns. If you just launch one outreach campaign, it may not be sufficient to change their attitude, and so they may be happy, they may be able to know, okay, snow leopard conservation is essential, but they may not change their behavior. Changing behavior is different thing than changing attitude. So you need to really change their behavior. If you want to make them change their behavior in support of snow leopard conservation, you need to address their local livelihood concerns. And these communities are really, and the communities that live alongside the snow leopard are really poor, and they are marginalized over the years. You don't have even basic facility, healthcare facility. You don't have schools. I have been in these landscapes for over 4-5 years, and I know it's difficult. It's hard, and it's difficult to speak. I mean, it's very marginalized. I mean, we really need to understand these situations and take a message to policy institutions and the policy persons to address these livelihood concerns of local communities. So let me quickly again summarize some of the key challenges that I have learned and that I think are most severe challenges in terms for snow leopard conservation. See, so despite great success in terms of pioneering study and many successes over the years, persistent challenges remain ahead. The key challenge to snow leopard conservation, at least that I feel, is to maintain development agenda without compromising the ecological integrity of the landscapes. So this is because, countries already transitioned to a federal system of government, and the local government having right to formulate their development plans. Development aspirations are growing in these otherwise like very virgin and untouched landscapes. So recently, a study commissioned by WWF Nepal in 2018 shows that the snow leopard habitat is likely to see severe impact due to existing and proposed linear infrastructure projects. So for example, many of these linear road projects connects snow leopard habitats. So they're connecting between north and south. These projects run through snow leopard habitats, like from Bheri corridor, for Karnali corridor, Kodari corridor, Hilsa corridor. All these landscapes, all these roads bisects the existing snow leopard habitat, and it could be economic in terms of economics. It could be beneficial, but if you want to also look at the ecological integrity of those landscapes, it can be a very difficult situation. So we really need to think about how to balance conservation and development, because the development aspirations are really growing, and we need to find a ways to integrate and to align our development aspirations and the ecological integrity of the systems. We can't exclude. So these development and conservation cannot go in isolation. So we need to really integrate them. They should be brothers. They shouldn't be like the very far apart. So once we align these things, once we convince policymakers, and achieving conservation agendas is not very hard fighting strategy, I think, because we can convince policymakers as well, as because we have the students like you. We are really interested in eastern leopards, and we have many people who are like-minded and who really want to make change in good direction. So 13 of these north-south road corridors, 10 of these traverse through snow leopard landscapes. So you can see the amount of impact they could have on snow leopard habitat. So one of the other key challenges, I think, is conservation beyond the protected areas. The challenge would be to ensure the conservation of more than 30% of the snow leopard habitat that currently lies outside the snow leopard and protected area system. So how to improve our knowledge base of snow leopards outside the protected areas? So you can see the red highlight, red circle part. So you can see the Humla area and the Mugu area is totally unprotected. And you can see the Charka area, it's unprotected. And between the, I think Manaslu and Langtang, there is unprotected area. The Arun Valley is also unprotected. So this is the challenge. We really need to understand, we really need to think about snow leopard stat and outside the protected area as well. If we want to make the regular connectivity, once these landscapes are really fragmented, even if you have snow leopards in Annapurna Conservation Area and Sefung National Park area, unless you conserve Charka corridor, you are not going to make the very long-term, you are not going to ensure the long-term viability of snow leopard population, because these currently snow leopard in maybe snow leopard from Annapurna and Sefung Sonora are having genetic exchanges. If you construct road in this landscape, this may going to fragment the population, and in the down the time, over the long years, it may have long-term implication in terms of genetic makeup and the genetic heterogeneity of the snow leopard populations. So another key challenge is to ensure the coexistence between human and snow leopards. I think this is one of the perhaps most serious challenges. With my limited experience, what I feel is that some level of predation on livestock is inevitable if human and snow leopards are to coexist. I think the challenge is now to identify ways to prevent predation as much as possible, while also offsetting the cost of the predation that incurs after livestock depredation. I think the potential way forward would be to reconcile conflict and coexistence. So we could compensate livestock losses. We could reduce the livestock losses, and we need to very really look at the local conditions. So the livestock depredation or human snow leopard conflict incidences are very variable over the landscapes in Nepal. So you have sometimes you have very site-specific peculiarities. So you really need to understand what's going on at the local level if you really want to manage like the human snow leopard conflict. There is no one state strategies to mitigate this human snow leopard conflict. So we have to formulate site-specific strategy as well. So yeah, one other key, after all, do we even know how many snow leopards we have in Nepal accurately? At the very basic level, we still don't know how many snow leopards we have. Despite nearly 4 decades of our work, our knowledge on snow leopard conservation is still limited. If you ask me, honestly, I don't know how many snow leopards are there. I can have a guess estimates based on previous knowledge and expert, but we don't have. Unless you have very good studies, we don't know. What is the exact potential habitat of snow leopard in Nepal? We don't know. We estimate that there is a 13,000 square kilometer area potentially snow leopard habitat, but we really don't know. Maybe some areas are occupied by snow leopard. Maybe when suitable, it is not necessary that all suitable habitat for snow leopard will be occupied by snow leopards, because then you need to have prey, you need to have minimal human disturbance, you need to have really good habitat, you need to have connectivity, everything's matter. So we also don't know what is the start of wild prey base. Unless you know very good information, unless you have very good information on basic pre-base of snow leopard, you are not going to be able, you won't be able to estimate the carrying capacity for snow leopards. So we don't know. And also we don't know about some areas, maybe livestock populations are really contributing snow leopard population, because contribution of livestock to snow leopard diet is substantially high in some areas. Example, in Manang, snow leopards are not just eating blue sheep, they are also eating livestock. Maybe that may mean some in some areas livestock may be contributing to snow leopard population. At the very basic, and again, what is the genetic makeup of snow leopard population in Nepal? Are there any particular genetic cluster? How diverse is the gene pool? How vulnerable, if there is a very low genetic heterogeneity, and maybe there is high vulnerability of some sort of like the disease outbreak or something like that, the population may be vulnerable to extinction. So we don't know all this information. So there is avenues, and there is a rich time that this is the good time, this is the best time you can approach one particular research question to contribute to snow leopard conservation. So while I discuss the challenges, I do want to share with some of the optimistic notes that lie ahead to address the challenges. And never before we had so much enabling political will, resource, and technology at our disposal to make snow leopard conservation a success story. We have everything that we want. The policy is so enabling. The policy is so enabling that the government is really willing to contribute to snow leopard conservation. We have National Snow Leopard Action Plan. With the personal interest of our ex-PM President, the construction of full-fledged snow leopard conservation center is ongoing. Availability of improved technologies is at our disposal. We have camera traps, we have GPS scholars, we have field scientists, we have local citizen scientists, we have research scientists, we have very interested like the government officers. So there is and we also have the global commitment in terms of like the global interest like GSLEP and the PAUSE, transbound DMOUs. So we have everything at our disposal to improve our understanding. So very interested and strong community-based institutions are already there. So these are very strengthened institutions. So we really can make difference. And having more than 70% of the area within the current protected area system is also our strength. We have 70% of the area protected. And we can now, having said that, the challenge is now to again capitalize on the opportunities to bring about desired change. There is of course opportunity, there are of course challenges. So now the challenge again is to capitalize on these opportunities to make the difference that we want to make. And the best way forward, I think first would be to assimilate and learning from the past efforts and document the best practices and make the best opportunities, make the use of the opportunities to address the challenges that I outlined. Some of the things that I think would be to leverage support for 0 to minimum impact for the development, and because we can't ignore the development. So the challenge. So again, so the way forward would be to leverage the policy support for the zero to minimum impact. We can introduce EIA guidelines. We can introduce the environmental compliance guidelines. I think that would be one of the way forward. And I think to address the knowledge gap, I think a good bet would be to continue and advance research and monitoring using technologies while retaining boots on the ground. We should never ever forget that we need more boots on the ground. And addressing the human-wildlife conflict or human snow leopard conflicts require multi-pronged strategies, because one type of strategy just focusing on compensation or just focusing on mitigation may not yield the comprehensive solution of managing human snow leopard conflicts. So we really need to understand people-park relationship, park-people relationship, and because the predation also varies across the landscapes. We really need to understand what's going on there to mitigate the human snow leopard conflict. And conserving 30+% of the snow leopard habitat that lies outside of the protected area would require a special approach. We know that expanding protected area is very hard fight strategy. We can't make it happen. The government may not expand the protected areas. The reality is very few people and politicians want protected areas because there are restrictions, I feel the best bet is to empower local government to declare some areas as minimal economic activity zone or maybe wildlife protection zone in their land use plans. Like local government can formulate their land use plans where they can allocate some areas for maybe like wildlife friendly zone where you can restrict some economic activities. And the idea would be to capacitate local governments technically and so that show them the way how they can improve livelihood via ecotourism. We can leverage ecotourism um, um, like like using snow leopard as a flag species. So we really need to understand those ideas as well, those strategies as well. And of course, to realize conservation aspirations, global, regional, and collaboration are vital is they bring multiple expertise. So for example, government of Nepal is currently chair of the GSLAB steering committee, and having the chair of and involvement in these global, like the multinational consortiums, forums, and the conferences, and what they bring is they bring multiple expertise, experience, and we can extend the knowledge, and we can transfer the knowledge. We can learn from Mongolia, we can learn from China, so that we can improve our ability to better solve snow leopard conservation and make the difference. So while I spoke about Nepal today, I think we may be missing something very fundamental to every conservation enterprise. This is, while looking at the bigger picture of snow leopard conservation, we often forget the local dynamics of snow leopard, individual snow leopard protect area or landscape. Let's say we may be forgetting what's going on, like what is the local dynamics of, say, Fuxino National Park. With few years of experience now, I feel like conservation is more of a socio-economic enterprise rather than just scientific. We know snow leopard landscapes are physically rugged. We know they are heterogeneous. So are the socio-cultural and economic and political and social dynamics and priorities of the communities that have been living there for millennia. They have different political ideologies. They have different socio-cultural requirements. They have different dynamics. They have different priorities. And with open market and development aspiration penetrating these otherwise very untouched landscapes, and this heterogeneity has become much more acute. And like there is so much dynamic that's difficult to comprehend. And understanding these multiple layers of heterogeneity in terms of the dynamics and acknowledging the years of struggle of these mountain communities toward the pursuit of maybe prosperity of their children, and building on the strength of these communities to make them stewards of their mountains and the natural environment is the best way forward for conserving snow leopards. We really need to understand the heterogeneity. We need to acknowledge their struggle. We need to understand that they have experience. We need to understand that they pursue the prosperity of their children, and that's why we need to build on their strength to make them the real stewards of their local environment. And I think adapting to local challenges and integrating science and social dimension would enable the conservation to work. I think that would be the perfect strategy. And I think I am run out of time. I'm sorry for taking so much time. I just quickly want to highlight some of the key things. In fact, I wanted to focus on this issue, but I didn't have. I should be very honest in acknowledging that given the time frame, I had very little time in just focusing on preparation. So we know that the COVID-19 has changed the way we look at many things in terms of our day-to-day life, in terms of research, in terms of our approach to research. Whatever you think, it has drastically changed the way of our life. And this has opened the avenues for many things, focusing on focusing on the things that matter to health, maybe ecosystem health or wildlife health, human health, all are connected. So what I think many of you in this webinar today come from the animal health background. So I think the potential role that you can make and really contribute to snow leopard conservation is by doing research on potential disease on snow leopards. I mean, that could be bacterial disease, viral disease, and parasite. Very, very little has been done to investigate the potential disease transmission risk and the host what kind of bacteria, virus, or parasites do snow leopard host. We have very, very little information. So I think there is a good opportunity to understand by investing more time on snow leopard disease. I think you could contribute in that. And we also know that the livestock, wildlife, wild ungulate in terms of blue sheep and snow leopard. So there is this three-way connection where the disease transmission can occur. So mostly the zoonotic diseases. So you could see the interaction, and you could really look into this, because livestock and ungulates share the same landscape. They graze together, and there is a chance that the snow leopard could risk transmission disease, and there could be two-way transmission as well. So we really need to focus on this as well. So this is where you can also contribute. So we know one thing that I want to mention, that trans-Himalayan mountains where snow leopards occur are very dry and they are arid. And unlike temperate and the warm climate where there are where there is more opportunity for the microbes to grow, maybe pathogens or whatever you want to call. I don't have very good command in the technical language of animal health, but whatever you call. So they have, so in Himalayas, what at least from my limited experience and my limited knowledge, I can say, so there are very, so there is a limited abundance of microbes or any pathogens and potential disease transmission agents in the Himalayas. But at the same time, while Himalayan landscapes has very low intensity of disease transmission risk, low intensity of agents that could transfer the disease, but there is a high vulnerability of exposure, because the snow leopards, ungulates, and the wildlife and the local people have very low level of immunity, because they haven't been involved, they haven't been able to adapt, and they haven't been evolved over the evolutionary time scale with these host and pathogen relationships. So at the one hand, at the one side, there is a very low intensity of abundance of microbes or pathogens that could transmit the disease. But on the flip side of that is that there is a high chance, there is a low immunity in terms of disease transmission risk. So there's a high chance that means that there's a high chance that once the disease outbreak occurs, it could drastically alter the whole ecosystems. So we know very little about this. So I think there is a good. So we must someone should must look into this dimension as well. So I'm sure some of you are also aware about the canine distemper viruses and that occurs mostly in the felids and carnivores, and there is a chance that that could also occur in snow leopards, as in the lions. So we have good colleagues. So I remember so one colleague who studied disease transmission rate in the dogs in the Manang. So you could Google him. I could find her contacts, and she has been really doing good work in terms of disease ecology in Nepal. So we have colleagues from India as well who are doing. So far, I have come across just 1 or 2 papers on disease on snow leopards. So we could discuss on these as well. So we have very limited understanding about wildlife genetics, particularly snow leopard genetics, and we know very little about wildlife, snow leopard health and snow leopard behavior. So you could use technologies like I know you are very good. Most of you are very good at biotechnology, using genetic tools to understand wildlife health. So we know very little. We also at the very basic level, we don't have basic information. What are the potential, like the disease transmission pathogens or bacteria, viruses, parasites, or whatever that are prevalent in current snow leopard population? Maybe they have not infected snow leopard. They are not very threatening to snow leopard population right now, but over the time they could impact. And the sudden transfer of any like the COVID virus, there could be sudden transmission to snow leopard population, and that could drastically alter, because they have very low immunity, and snow leopard population haven't been evolved to adapt to the changes and adapt to these novel parasites or novel virus or whatever you want to say. So we can really do good work on this direction as well. And so I am from forestry background. So in the Ministry of Forests and Environment in Nepal, whatever, like there are 4 to 5 departments, and we still have limited wildlife technicians. We have limited wildlife veterinarian. We have limited wildlife doctors. We know very little about wildlife health. Let's say so what we do, we have very limited understanding. We studied wildlife biology, but our major focus has been on management rather than research and the other health conditions. So we don't know wildlife medicine things. Let's say I rescued a ghoral. I don't know how the ghoral is feeling. What are the behavior after rescue? Whether there is any psychological trauma in terms of wildlife health, how they think. I don't know how animals behaves. So we really need to build very evidence-based strategies for rescue, rehabilitation, wildlife health, behavior after rescue, wildlife medicine, controlling of trauma, darting wildlife. So we have very, very limited persons working on these directions. Amit sir and the Kiran Rizal sir and some of the technicians are trained by the NTNC and Tarai protect areas. Apart from that, we have very, very limited, and this is the direction where we can exploit, where you can use this opportunity and avenues to pursue your career. And I'm sure people like me who have field level experience and people like you who have the real technical knowledge of wildlife health and wildlife genetics could make best use of whatever knowledge we have to make a real difference. I think we must work on this direction as well. And we have very limited knowledge on research. We have very limited knowledge on breeding biology and reproductive behavior in snow leopards. We know snow leopards are also most likely most alike reproductive behavior to tigers, but they could be very different. Because there are more hardships on the Himalayan landscape than in the Tarai. It's very difficult to get prey, and it's very difficult to get food for snow leopards. Maybe they have adopted different reproductive behavior. Maybe they are the first mating time or reproductive age is different, right? So we don't know basic biology. We don't know basic breeding biology. We don't know what the physiology like the. So one of my colleague, I have been working with one of Japanese professor. So she has been studying snow leopards in the captive, the endocrinology of snow leopards. So all these things I don't know very much about the very technical terms, but I can feel the essence of integrating wildlife health knowledge, integrating disease aspect, integrating the wildlife genetic aspect, integrating these aspects not just to improve our understanding, but also to manage. Because once we have good knowledge of rehabilitation, once we have good knowledge of wildlife medicine, once we have good knowledge of animal capturing and darting, we can manage problem animals. And I shouldn't say problem animals. We can better manage the problems that arise when human and wildlife interact each other. I think I'm sure I might have missed many things. I just wanted to highlight this. Thank you very much for joining. I think I almost took 1 hour. I'm so sorry for this, and I would be happy to answer the questions that we have. Thank you, Prasan bhai.
Thank you very much, sir, for your informative presentation. So I would like to request all participants, if you have any questions, you can drop it in chat box, or you can raise your hand and directly ask to our research person. I think there is a question in the chat box.
Sorry, I haven't seen. Yeah, let me try to.
So you can you see it?
Sorry, let me quickly.
Or I will present to you the question.
Yeah, sure. That would be interesting.
So the questions from Leopard, he have named as Leopard. First of all, thank you all for organizing this seminar. Happy International Snow Leopard Day to everyone. My question is, the Snow Leopard Conservation Action 2017-21 aims to review and improve the community-based insurance scheme. Is any insurance scheme related to livestock depredation due to the predators being applied in the Safe Oxendo National Park? So did you got the question?
Yes, I did. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let me quickly put this. Let me quickly. So yeah, so we have introduced community-based insurance schemes in Safe Oxendo National Park. Thanks to the support from WWF Nepal and other partner organizations. So the livestock insurance scheme started in 2008, I guess, in Bhejer block, and now we have expanded in 5 more blocks, namely Saldang, Dho, Phoksundo, and Dolphu. I sincerely acknowledge that we are not super happy with whatever outcome we have so far in terms of effectiveness of community-based insurance schemes, but we do surely believe in the potential of community-based insurance scheme in not just reducing the livestock depredation by snow leopard, but also fostering positive attitudes towards snow leopard among local communities. So we have provided more than 1.5 crore to these snow leopard conservation community as a seed fund. And they have, for example, in particular in the Jeborang Snow Leopard Conservation Committee in Bhijer, they have very nice system of verifying the livestock losses to snow leopards and compensating every year. So what they do is they raise premiums every year. They pay out the compensation claims. They verify the livestock losses, and they have very good system. But once you have the small community like in Bhijer, it's very difficult to maintain the effectiveness. But once you go to the Saldan, which is very large landscape, and the population is more than 22,000, and there are like more than 10 villages, and it's very difficult to manage that insurance scheme in large villages, because once you have more people, there is more heterogeneity, and they have many different feelings. Nobody is very really into snow leopard conservation, but because it takes time. It asks you to also contribute, because once you pay premiums, you have to pay premiums. So I certainly believe in the potential of community based insurance schemes. But again, I shouldn't be very like, okay, this is the one fight strategy. I should be very honest in acknowledging that there are the things that we really need to improve, and there are the things we need to change in the way we think local community works. It can't be like a blanket community based conservation. It can't be there can't be any blanket approach. Like there is heterogeneity inside community based conservation as well. So did I answer the question well? I mean, yeah.
Thank you, sir. I think the question is addressed as well. There is another question from Ms. Anamika. Is there any cases of tuberculosis in snow leopard?
Thank you very much for the interesting questions. We do not have information. That's the, whether you want to call it as a good note or bad note or like optimistic note, whatever you call, that's the current state. We really don't know very well, and we really need people like you who can contribute in examining the prevalence of basic disease pathogens. And I'm more than happy to collaborate, and more than happy to welcome you in, say, Phuktam National Park, and our warden sir would be more than happy to welcome you if you have any research ideas that aligns with the wildlife like snow leopard health. I'll be more than happy to collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. There is another question from Mr. Vinay Thapa. What are the national and international funding organizations, either governmental or non-governmental, in snow leopard conservation?
So yeah, let me quickly tell you. So snow leopard conservation has really good network of scientists. So we have Snow Leopard Network. It's a professional network of some more than 400 interested civil society members, students, experts, policy makers, interested in snow leopard conservation and trying to make difference. So we have Snow Leopard Network. We have big international NGOs like Snow Leopard Network, Snow Leopard Trust, which has program in some. It doesn't have program in Nepal, but it does have program in China and India. So it has it has very long-term monitoring program in Mongolia. So we have Snow Leopard Conservancy, founded by Dr. Rodney Jackson, who pioneered snow leopard study in the wild. So Snow Leopard Conservancy has projects in Nepal, Bhutan, and China and India, I guess, and some other countries as well. So we have WWF Nepal and WWF International, really working on snow leopard conservation, and focus of WWF Nepal has surely been on snow leopard conservation. And we have Wildlife Conservation Society, and in some places, yeah, Wildlife Conservation Society also has programs on snow leopards. So we have many international NGOs and networks. And so recently there is one under the GSLEP framework. There is one initiative, Population Assessment of World's Snow Leopard. It stands for PODGE, Population Estimation of World's Snow Leopard. So it is comprised of good, very statistical ecologists, biologists, and it aims to have a global robust population of snow leopards by supporting governments, NGOs, and scientists and interested anyone. So we have very like good international collaboration, NGOs and INGOs and scientists, and good network for snow leopard conservation. And there are some small scale research grants and that provide um, research grants to snow leopard projects. Unfortunately, it has been postponed for a while, like 2-3 years ago. So you could Google snow leopard network, and you could access many videos and many things, many resource. And you could also access globalsnowleopard.org. So it has very good compilation of many resource materials. Thanks.
Thank you very much, sir. There is another question from Mr. Tashi. Mr. Tashi Taman, have you seen any premature death of snow leopard in Seifoksundo National Park?
Again, thank you very much for this interesting question. We really don't know well. I wish I could, but we don't know whether there are any premature. So one thing is, it's extremely hard to study. We must acknowledge that. And that's one thing, it's extremely hard to study. You need that sort of dedication and perseverance to go to snow leopard landscape at the first place. And once you go there, that it's a different world. And I'm sure you will be very thrilled to be there. And once you are there, once you are acclimatized, and there are lots of things that you can do. I wish we could do this, and I would like to request you to develop any sort of research idea that you could do and share with us, and share to the Department of National Park and Wildlife Conservation in Kathmandu, and we could do something. Yeah, we don't know whether there are any premature death of snow leopards. They're supposed to be infanticide, as in tiger, but I don't know. It's very well documented and very prevalent in snow leopards, at least. I think Karan sir might know about this infanticide things. I don't know much. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Karan sir want to say
so,
quickly. Karan sir want to say. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you.
Karan, sir, you can.
Thank you very much for the very nice presentation. And I also thank the organizer, especially on the World Snow Leopard Day. They have organized beneficial and important talk program. I was part of Snow Leopard project way back in 80s, early 80s. We worked in the same area where Gopal is this time still he is working in Seifoksundo National Park. We were in Nangu Valley, that is Mugu district extension of Seifoksundo National Park. We radio collared 5 snow leopards, and I was there for almost 5 years studying snow leopard, is prey species, um, social aspect, and many more. I would like to just share my experience in brief, and also some question you already asked. Especially, I take conservation, especially snow leopard conservation, as a social problem rather than a scientific problem. Yeah. So you, Gopal, already mentioned in detail, especially a picture of snow leopard country, snow leopard range area. It's from far eastern Nepal to far western Nepal. It's the same wherever you go, either in Kanchenjunga or in Karnali or in Darchula, Abhinamba, everywhere. High altitude people, most of they are Tibetan origin, and they obey Buddhist religion, and they believe strongly in Buddhism, and livelihood problem. And most of the time, if you talk about 20 or 25 years before, almost most of the time, I mean, almost 4 or 5 months, they subsist on wildlife products, especially income generated through hunting of different species of wildlife, including snow leopard. And the case is, little bit changed nowadays, but still, we have to work a lot on this chapter. And regarding the disease, uh, somebody asked about tuberculosis and also some other disease, because most of you are from that background. So during my 5 6 years experience, uh, I have seen most of the snow leopard food items. That's where we were working in Langu Valley of Mugu district. There were blue sheep, there were Himalayan thar, there were goral, then musk deer, and there was once an epidemic of mange. The mange in Nepali we call it luto. And starting from blue sheep, almost all ungulate they suffered from this disease, and there was high mortality, high mortality. So this ultimately may cause snow leopard survival. No food items, maybe then they have to depend more on livestock. Though this is not common cause, but if wild food predator population decreases, ultimately they have to live on the domestic stock. And this year also I've heard the same happening in Annapurna area, especially in Mustang district, Tilusu area of Mustang district, and people have seen a few blue sheep dying due to mange. They said the people they complain blue sheep they are falling from cliff and dying because of blindness. And this blindness I'm sure because same happened in Langu area where we study snow leopard. The people the ungulates they lose their pelt, they lose their fur, and this mange, this luto, also attack on their eyes, and they become blind, and they cannot, walk on the cliff. They ultimately they fall from the cliff and they die. One phenomenon I have witnessed, and I told you this is taking place this time also in Annapurna conservation area. Then about tuberculosis, I don't know whether it was tuberculosis or some other disease, but once Dolfu people, where we were studying snow leopards, they told me they were in the field for collecting jimbu. Jimbu, a variety of wild garlic. It's not actually garlic, but jimbu we know. We Nepalese know jimbu. It's a usual regular process. They collect jimbu from wild and then they sell jimbu in other place of district. And they were in a group. They were resting at one place, and during night time, one uh, sub-adult snow leopard, very sick, highly emaciated, very weak, visited at their campsite. They captured and they kept it for 4 5 days with them. They offered food, their own food, but finally it succumbed to the disease. I have uh, I have written one article including this information, but there was no external injury mark, and the animal was very very weak. There was only skeleton on the body, so could be tuberculosis or some other disease. I don't know. Yeah, that's my experience. Um, Finally, I would like to share you Gopal Bhai exactly elaborated everything, and but I just want to tell you the future of snow leopard in Nepal. Um, Among the 12 range countries, Nepal is known to second in the conservation of snow leopards. We are doing in different field. We are using different methods, social methods, scientific method, and everything. And our people are very strong, knowledgeable. We are doing uh, very much, especially in the compete between people and small leopard. And the new idea emerged. Many places they have predator-proof corral. So this conflict day by day decreasing. But my opinion, what I think is, is a protection of snow leopard is would be very simple if our government spends at least 40-50 million rupees per year just by providing full compensation to snow leopard losses to livestock. We have a presently we have a compensation plan mechanism. We have an insurance mechanism. We have a, what you call it's a relief mechanism. But these are not enough. I think people should be paid fully, but there should not be fraudulent claims, but should be paid fully, and that will definitely stop retaliatory killing. So thank you very much. This is from my side. I also thanks you again and happy Dasara to all of you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Prasan bhai, do we have more questions? And I just want to reiterate that I couldn't agree more with Karan sir. He brings 30 plus years of experience on snow leopard conservation, and he really knows well. He has traveled a lot from eastern to western, and he has been to this place when I was not even born. My parents were not married at the time when he studied snow leopards. So I really thank Karan sir for not just taking time and taking your time and answering the questions that some of our colleagues raised, but also encouraging us and giving so much hope that we can do a lot. Thank you, Karan sir. You have been an amazing person.
Thank you very much, Gopal sir. As well as I would like to thank Karan sir for his appearance. We are very much delighted to have you. So I would like to also thank Dr. Eric for his attendance in this session. So it seems like there is no further questions. We are already late in time. So I would like to thank everyone who have contributed to this program. And I would like to request Mr. Prashant Gimire, coordinator of Standing Committee of Animal Welfare of IVSC Rampur, to give a short thank you speech and close this session. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you everyone for this event.
Yes. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes,
you are.
yes.
Yes, thank you, sir, for such smooth and informative presentation. As far as I know, we students of veterinary field are quite unaware and unknown about the contribution that can be made in the field of wildlife, as we are focusing in the course content which mostly features domestic animals. Thank you, sir, for connecting us with the mysterious and exciting field of wildlife. And we are thankful to all the participants for joining, including the representative from International Veterinary Outreach and managing their time in this festive season. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prashant. Sir, if you have any words to share with us, it
Yeah.
would be
Thanks. I just want to say thanks for inviting and thanks for providing this opportunity. And I really apologize for not being able to pull very good materials together given the short time frame. And I'm just planning. I am off to field next week. I had just postponed my field work and I couldn't prepare well. But I hope I was able to at least share the information, at least share you with an opportunity that we can collaborate, and there are lots of things that we could do together. And thanks a lot, Prasan bhai, and everyone who connected, who reached out to me. And I would like to thank Amit sir, who connected us. And I would be more than happy to collaborate, because this is where we can really make difference. See, the only one person can't do everything. So that's what I feel. I can't do many things. So this is where we need multidisciplinary collaboration to make difference. Thank you very much. And I'd be more than happy to answer your questions over emails. Please reach out to me and let's collaborate. It's not one way. I would be more than happy to have you in Safe Oxon National Park if I'm not good enough to suggest or advise you, I would be able to connect with the department people who are more experienced than I do, and there are lots of things that we can do together. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you
That's all.
very much, sir. We are very happy to see all participants and especially Dr. Eric to be present in this session. So we would like to thank everyone, especially Dr. Amir as well as Gopal sir, Karan sir, and Poojan Basal Dai for providing us this Zoom platform. So thank you very much. So we are at the last of this session. So we will wrap up this session. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks. Thank you all. Have a good Dasein. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. You too. Okay, so we will end this session. Thank you very
Sure.
much, everyone, for the participation. Okay, bye. Happy Dasai to all.
Thanks.